Welcome to the Navigating Cancer Together podcast. My name is Talea Dindy. I am a 10-year cancer thriver, cancer doula, and owner of On the Other Side. I use my experience to help others get on the other side of cancer. This podcast is about sharing stories, resources, and information about all things related to cancer and wellness. I interview guests from all walks of life who are living with cancer, caregivers, and those who made it on the other side. Also, I talk with organizations, healthcare professionals, and experts in the health and wellness spaces who offer complementary and integrative care. Join me. We are in this together. Hello, and welcome to Navigating Cancer Together. My name is Talea Dindy, and today we have a very special guest with us, Marci Greenberg Cox. And, I just can't wait for you guys to hear Marci's story. She has done some amazing things, even though she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Marci Greenberg Cox is the author of Mommy Has a Boo Boo, Explaining Breast Cancer to Children. In 2018, she was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer while undergoing an aggressive course of treatment, which included a double mastectomy without reconstruction surgery, chemotherapy, which resulted in complete hair loss, and everything else related to cancer. She also has written journals such as Mommy Has a Boo Boo, Now What? And the Breast Cancer GPS. Marci, thank you so much for joining me today and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I cannot wait, Marci. You have done so many great things since your diagnosis. And let's just dive right in. Please share your cancer journey and how you received your diagnosis.
Yeah, so in 2018, I was taking a shower with my daughter. And I hardly ever do self-exams. And I said, I'm just going to feel it because she's soaping herself up, whatever. And she was 5 at the time. So I had a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. They are now 4 and 8. And so I'm feeling around and I felt something on the left side. And I said to my husband, I'm feeling something. I'm not sure what's going on. So I made him feel it too. And he goes, yeah, let's get you into the doctor. Because 2 years prior to that, I had felt something on my right side and it ended up being a fibroid. And so at 38, I had my first mammogram. And so as people know, typically it's around 40 is when you have your first mammogram, unless there's breast cancer runs in your family or you have a symptom like I did 2 years prior. So I went into my gynecologist and she felt it. She thought the fibroid maybe had come back just on the other side. But again, just to be safe, she goes, I want you to have a mammogram and an ultrasound. And so I had scheduled it and they scheduled me for 3 weeks out because they were going to do the 3D. And something in the back of my head said to me, you need to get in sooner. And I always say to people now, listen to what your gut says, because thank goodness I did, because they got me in that same week.
Good.
And it was November 13th. Is when I went in for the mammogram and ultrasound. And the radiation doctor came in and she goes, do you have another hour? Because we'd like to do a biopsy. And I was like, well, I guess I don't have a choice. And of course I start getting very scared.
Yes.
And I got very lucky too, because I've heard of other women that have to wait another week or so to get a biopsy. So I said, of course, if you need to do it now, let's do it. And so when I was there, the nurse said to me, you'll probably find out tomorrow, but the radiologist said to me, you'll probably find out on Friday. And so of course, Thursday comes around and, I hadn't heard anything. I called in, they still hadn't gotten the results back. So I took my daughter to her swim lesson and about 3:30, I said to my husband, I'm going to give them a call. Mm-hmm. And so I did. And she gets back on the phone with me within, seconds, a minute. And she goes, I'm so sorry you have cancer. Oh. And of course, I'm in shock, just like anyone who finds out they have cancer is in shock. Yes. And my daughter luckily did not even go into swimming yet. She was still waiting for her name to be called. So I said, we're out of here. All of a sudden I started crying. So of course, everyone knew something was going on.
Yeah.
I grabbed the baby who was in her car seat. We got in the car. My daughter says to me, Mommy, what's wrong? Because I'm crying hysterically. And I said, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Mommy's going to fix this. We're going to fix this. And, you
Mhm.
know, I mean, she's never seen me so hysterical before.
Yes.
And so was I saying that to reassure myself? Probably.
Yes.
But also just to reassure them, because my kids were so young. All I kept thinking was like, oh my God, I want to see my kids grow up and have their own families and whatever. So of course, I don't even remember driving home.
Yes.
You know, I called my husband, I called my aunt and my brother. My parents were actually out of the country in Israel, so I could not tell them. And we decided, my brother and my aunt and I all decided that I was going to ignore their phone calls,
Mhm.
and pretend like I was very busy with work, because I'm a workaholic anyway. And my parents get that, they know that. And so I didn't want to ruin their vacation for them.
Right.
So we waited till they got home, and it was like a week later. So it was very hard for me to, you know, have to tell them. And so my brother and I had this whole plan that, you know, we would Zoom with them and we would say to them, you know, how was Israel, and then tell them the bad news. And of course, my brother, he's 3 years older than me, starts crying, and he's there at 7 in the morning. So which is 4 o'clock Arizona time. And so first my mom had a red flag. So she goes, why is your brother here this early? Why are we calling you? And why is your brother crying?
Mhm. They
And so of
knew.
course I just had to come out and say, Mommy.
Yeah.
At 40 years old, I had to call her Mommy. I was like, Mommy, I have breast cancer. And at first she didn't believe it. She thought it was her fault because she
Mhm.
smoked, you know, all like forever. She's still a
Mhm.
smoker. And so my dad's in bed going, what's going on? Because, you know, he's still half asleep. And, you know, so we told him what was going on. And so good and bad news. I mean, the good news is they're snowbirds here in Arizona, which means that they have a
Okay.
home here half the time of the year. And
Mhm.
so they came out for pretty much the full year of my treatments and everything. So I was very lucky that I had that support, because they took my kids on the weekends I had chemo. And I didn't even know I was going to have chemo yet. I ended
Wow.
up doing my surgery first. And because they thought the tumor was a lot smaller than it was, I thought it
Mhm.
was like 0.9 centimeters. And I did all the scans. I did an MRI, I did a CAT scan. I ended up with a PET scan at the very end after getting denied twice by insurance.
Wow.
And they didn't see it in my lymph nodes. And so I said to all my doctors, I looked them straight in the eye and I said, if I was your mom, your daughter, your sister, whatever, what would you recommend? And they said, take them off.
Mhm.
I said, okay,
Mhm.
because I had the choice to do the lumpectomy.
Right.
And for me, I was so afraid that I would kept wondering when it would go into the other breast or when it would come back. And
Mhm.
so I just, I said, fine, take them both. We ended up taking both of them. And from then, they didn't even send it out for the oncotype. And the oncotype is a score that
Mhm.
says if chemo is going to be beneficial or not.
Right.
And so they didn't do that because they ended up taking 12 of my lymph nodes and 4 of them were precancerous.
Oh,
So my doctor says, you don't have a choice. He goes, you're 40, you're doing chemo and you're doing radiation.
okay, Marcy. So let's pause right there for a second. And I want to go back to something that you mentioned about your mother. She felt guilty. And I know that you mentioned that she's a smoker. Did cancer happen to run in your family at all? Did your mother have cancer, breast cancer before? Was there any family history?
Not of breast cancer. I mean, when they ask you your family history, they'll only go back to immediate family or maybe first cousins. But I did have, I want to say she's my third cousin, because it's my dad's first, so maybe my second cousin. She did have breast cancer. I had another cousin who had ovarian cancer, but they were a little far related according to the doctors, so they didn't really count that.
Mhm.
I think a grandparent had leukemia. One had, I think, colon cancer. So, but breast cancer didn't run my family. So it was such a fluke. And I ended up getting the genetic testing, which came back negative.
Wow.
So it's the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 gene. They did find another mutation, which they didn't know too much about. And so when my 5 years is up, they want me to get retested again just to see if anything has changed.
Sure.
So I ended up not doing a hysterectomy because my diagnosis, I ended up being invasive ductal carcinoma, so IDC. And then I was hormone positive. So we call it ER/PR positive. And I was HER2 negative. And so when my HER2 negative, that pretty much determined that I was going to have my surgery first, especially because my BRCA genes were negative.
Okay.
And so if those had been reversed and it was positive and my BRCA was positive, then for sure I'd be doing a double mastectomy and then most likely chemo first.
Okay.
But in my case, I ended up doing the surgery first and then found out I had to do chemo and radiation.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that for the audience. I know that's going to be very helpful for some ladies out there, or even men if they, have to have breast cancer. So let's get back to your surgery and the mastectomy that you had. And so let's talk about that a little bit, because after that is complete, Marci, I understand that there's still more decisions that have to be made. So can you please share with us, what decision you made and how you came to that decision?
Sure. So a lot of women have the option to have reconstruction. And you can either get implants, or there's another thing called deep flap, where they take the tissue and the fat from your abdomen area, sometimes the back, and they will make breasts out of your own skin. And I knew for me, I was 99% sure I was going to stay flat. I knew I did not want implants, even though I was small anyway. And I had some people say, hey, you're going to get the size you've always wanted now, which, hey, sounds great. But realistically, I did not want a foreign object in my body.
I understand.
I've been reading up as well about the breast implant illness. And I was just so afraid that I would have some type of reaction. So I knew I didn't want to do that. The deep flap also scared me. I saw a bunch of women with pictures that had open wounds, but if the skin does not take, if your own skin does not take, they can't reuse different skin. So they have to put an implant in you. And so that made me nervous. Plus it was a 13-hour surgery. Wow. And they even said to me, that surgery is longer if you had open heart surgery.
Oh my goodness.
Me, I was like, I do not want to be under for 13 hours. That scares me. And if my skin doesn't take and I've got all these issues, I didn't want to deal with that. And then even if you do implants or the deep flap, you still have to have more surgery on top of that, because then you have to have what is called fat grafting to smooth things out, even them up so both sides are the same, and or very similar. And I was like, that's not for me. I don't have time for all these surgeries. My kids are young. Like, I just want to move on with life. So I decided to stay flat. I did get prosthetics, and I actually got 2 sets. I got one, which is called knitted knockers, and those are free. Women knit them for you, and it's a breast form, and you can take the stuffing out of it if you want, and then you can, insert it into a bra. The other ones I actually got were the actual prosthetic that feels like a breast. And again, you stick it into the mastectomy bras. And so, I wear those occasionally. I've probably worn them maybe now 10 times in the 3 years, because I'm coming up on 3 years. Wow. And so I enjoy being flat. It does not bother me at all.
Good.
And it's kind of like, it also helps show my girls too, because I did put on the prosthetics the other day, and my 8-year-old looks at me and goes, Mommy, what are you wearing? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, that does not look like you at all. She goes, take those off.
Oh,
and
I
so
love
me,
kids.
That actually gave me a warm feeling a warm, like fuzzy feeling, because I'm teaching my girls that it's okay to look different.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So
she's like, Mom, don't do that. No.
Right? She's like, what?
That's wonderful. And just to have, kids are so innocent and honest, very honest anyway. And just for her to say that, God, that must have felt so good. Like, hey, what? I don't need to do this.
Right, right. And I want my girls to be proud of who they are and what they look like, with all that body imaging out there and everything. Like, I just want them to understand it doesn't matter what you look like. You love the person for who they are and everything. And my husband was on board from day one that said, take them off and don't do anything. He's like,
Oh,
you're done.
good,
Stay flat.
good.
So at least I had that backup support as well.
Absolutely. And that is so critical, especially if you're married or you have a partner. I know a lot of times, you just said it, there's so much coming from society about body image and all of that. And unfortunately, a lot of women feel like they're no longer feminine if they have to, be flat or something like that. So they feel pressured to have those other procedures that you mentioned, and they sound like they can create other issues down the road. It just sounds like a lot after you've already been through chemotherapy and other surgeries. So I understand why you came to that conclusion, and I want to applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Marci, for sharing that, because I know that there's someone out there who needs to hear about your experience and that it turned out just fine and you're happy with your decision. So thank you. So, Marci, what helped you thrive after cancer?
So basically, it brought out a passion in me. And because my husband always said to me, what are you passionate about? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I've been doing real estate for, I'm going on 21 years. And I still love my job, but there's definitely parts of me that are burnt out from it. And he always said, well, what would you do if you didn't do real estate? I said, I don't know. And then I got cancer. And all of a sudden, I just wanted to help other women in my situation. And I started writing really just for my own healing purposes. I did YouTube videos just to share everything. I was an open book. And I started writing and I said to myself, I'm going to publish this. And because when I was looking for books to read to my daughters, there really was not anything that touched base about a woman staying flat. There was books about, mommy's going to lose her hair, or mommy's going to have a mastectomy, or, mommy's going to, mommy has breast cancer and here's whatever. So my book I ended up writing was Mommy Has a Boo-Boo, explaining breast cancer to children. And that it touches base about those things, like mommy's going to have surgery. So basically it was my journey. Mommy was having surgery. She's going to have to do medicine. Mommy's going to look different, but you know what? She's still the same mommy. She still loves you. And when you hug her, and you hug her even closer because the breasts aren't in the way, that you can actually hear her heart beating.
Oh, I
And
love
so,
that.
just really teaches the kids like, hey, mommy may look different, she's going to lose her hair, whatever, but she's still the same mommy. She still loves you in the end. And so I wrote that one, and I ended up publishing that in 2020. And from there, and I thought that I was going to be one book and done. But then I started things just started coming up in my mind. And I ended up writing a journal to go along with that book, because kids have so many questions.
Yes.
And my daughter, my 8-year-old, 5 at the time, just kept asking all these questions. Like, she would go to her grandparents' house. So it's like, who's picking her up from school? Who's taking her to this? What does mommy have to do? Like her and I got her matching wigs. So we both had rainbow wigs.
Nice.
Because I wanted to make it fun for them. And I didn't want
Yeah.
them to be so scared. And so I came up with this book, Mommy Has a Boo-Boo, Now What? And so it's a journal that has, it's also like a discussion coloring book, because I took pictures from the children's book. And it's questions that the parent and child can discuss. So I think the first page, there's a picture of a woman breastfeeding or doing something, a leg, and then, a woman's head. And it says, where's mommy's boo-boo? And so the child could point and go, it's in her boob.
Mhm.
Another one is, okay, mommy's going to lose her hair. What ideas can you help make fun? And I've got some pictures of baseball caps and different hats and wigs. And then I say, draw something else that might help mommy. And so it gives them that thing, gives them that just that sense of, hey, hopefully mommy's going to be okay. Because
Mhm.
there is one question in that book that every kid wants to know: is mommy going to die?
Yes.
And you have to have
Understand.
that discussion. I mean,
Yes,
it's so
absolutely.
hard. It's so heartbreaking to even think about that. But I mean, I was thinking about that because I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen with my girls? Do I start writing them letters
Mm,
if I'm not going to be around?
yeah.
And
And they're so
so,
young.
yeah, and they're so young. And it's like, but I always had that mentality to think about the future. And so
Yes,
I wanted parents to be able to have those discussions, even if they're hard ones. And
that's
so
great.
they're afraid to bring them up. So they're in the book.
I
So I
love
put as
that.
much as I could in there. And then I came up with another one called the Breast Cancer GPS, and it's for newly diagnosed women. Because when I went through it, my friend Jamie, she is actually a 2-time cancer survivor now because she was recently diagnosed again. But I had reached out to her when I first found out, and I said, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call.
Mhm.
And she had already gone through it. And so she had to research doctors, and she had given me some stuff. And she said, you need to come in with your medical history. And
Yes.
so I put that all together in a journal, and it's got, your list of medications, supplements, over the counter meds, um, family history, who else in your family's had cancer? Because every time you go into the doctor's office, they ask those questions.
Mhm.
And who can remember everything? And who wants to
Exactly.
write it down so many times?
Mhm.
So I have it in the journal. And then from there, I also have questions to ask all these different doctors, because
That's
I know
great.
so many women on my Facebook group sites are like, what do I ask? And so I've got questions to ask your plastic surgeon, your oncologist, your radiologist, and your, I missed one, radiologist, I think.
Mhm.
So I've got questions there. Now, I may not have hit every question, so I do have a
Of
blank
course.
space where you can add your own questions in there.
Yes.
But then as you move forward, then I've got tips and tricks through all of your treatments. So from surgery to chemo to radiation, what tips and tricks might you need? And so it's just a really helpful journal
Mhm.
that I've gotten a lot of great feedback from. And so I've been going through that and just and making some more. I've got a couple other journals out there. My daughter is now an author. Her and
Oh,
I did
nice.
2 coloring books together. And so I've really thrived from it. I've turned lemons into lemonades,
That's
to answer
right.
your question.
Yes, that's right.
I just made it where I'm helping women. I volunteer with a couple organizations here in Arizona,
Great.
and I'm just giving back, and I'm helping these women that have been newly diagnosed, because they don't know what to do. They don't know who to turn to. And I've been there, I've
Mhm.
done that.
And when you're able to give back like that, of course, no one wants to be diagnosed with cancer, but then you're able to look back and say, you know what? It was worth it because now I can pay it forward to these women who are in a situation that I was in where I didn't know what to do. I was afraid. And so thank you for all that you do for people that have been diagnosed with breast cancer. I do have one question for you, and that is regarding the surgery that you had. In the healing process, what is one piece of advice that you have for people that choose to remain flat and have a double mastectomy?
Well, you need to learn to accept yourself. I mean, obviously I had some pain, and I slept in a recliner for probably a month because I had drains in me and stuff. But you have
Mhm.
to learn to accept yourself. And what I mean by that is I kind of looked at the positive, because now I got a new wardrobe from it,
Yeah.
because I didn't really know how to dress. I mean, there's still times where I'll wear shirts that are, t-shirts without a bra or anything. And
Mhm.
but I started to use Stitch Fix, which is an online site, and I've been using it for 3 years now.
Okay.
And you just tell them, I went in, I said I had a double mastectomy, I remained flat, so I need something to accentuate the top part. So they would send me clothes with ruffles or
Oh,
stripes,
nice.
or things to really make it look like maybe I'm wearing a bra or whatever, just so the eyes are not drawn to that area.
Mhm.
And so I even went into Macy's and got their personal shopper and had them help me. So, I made it fun. So now I look forward, like every 3 months, I get new outfits. I'm like, do I like it? If not, I ship it back. Um,
Nice.
but so it's like, you just got to learn to accept yourself. And just like my
Mhm.
daughters have now accepted me because they know mommy doesn't have any breasts. Um,
Yes.
it's really learning to love yourself and
Mhm.
accepting who you are. There's still going to be like, I'm 3 years out, but I'm still on long-term medication. And so my body has changed. I've gained weight from it. And
Yes,
so I'm trying to learn to love my new shape than what I was before.
absolutely.
And so it's all about accepting.
And you mentioned a lot of changes. And I think too, when someone's newly diagnosed, they don't really realize how many changes are going to take place, not just, to your body, but, sometimes to your mind,
Mhm.
your spirit, just a lot of things change. And for some people, that's hard to grasp. Um, but just people like you sharing your story, that can make it so much easier for people. And then they don't feel like, well, I'm the only person gaining weight, or I'm the only
Right.
person whose body is totally different now. And that's part of the journey. And you know what, thankfully you're still here, even though you've had all these changes. So
Right.
thank you, Marci. And so, Marci, I like to ask my guests two questions. And the first one is, what is something that you've learned in life that you would like to share with the audience?
What have I learned in life? I guess don't take things for granted. Um, I've always, like I said, in the past, I've been a workaholic. Um, I like live in my office and just do so much. And I never really took time out for myself or for my family. And I used to love traveling. And so when I was diagnosed, I said to my husband, we're gonna travel more. And so I had
Nice.
booked things. Of course, unfortunately, COVID hit, so I did have to cancel a few things. But we said, you know what? Screw it. Like we're gonna find the money for it and go and do these things. So even if we did, like we went up to Flagstaff and got an Airbnb and just got away for the weekend, which was
Nice.
perfect. Um, I did when I was in remission and everything, my husband and I went on a celebration trip. My mom
Nice.
and I took a celebration trip. And so it's like we want to do more of that stuff, just to get out there. And like just a few months ago, him and I went to Las Vegas and my parents watched the kids. And that was so needed. Him and I actually connected more, because that's another thing too. I mean, even though you've got a supportive spouse or partner, you've got to get that connection again, because even though I look different, I feel different, my mood, whatever, something was wrong in our marriage as well. And so we were able to reconnect, and
Good.
we're still working on things ourselves, but it's definitely a turning point to the positive side. Because
Good.
I know a lot of people have gotten divorced once they've been diagnosed with cancer. And so there's just so many different things besides the way you look. It's the way you feel, and just, just looking in the future, like, hey, is this where I want to be? And things like
Hmm.
that. And so I really just I'm taking that all in. I'm still learning because I'm in therapy.
Yeah.
And so I'm still learning all of that stuff. And it's an ongoing process. So,
Absolutely, definitely. And that's another thing too. People think that, I'm done with the treatment, that's it. It's just going to go back to normal. And no, it's
mhm,
ongoing. It's a continuum. And I think, some people get really discouraged because they thought that, what, this is just going to be, I'm just going to get through these 6 months or a year or whatever, and it'll be fine. And you provided a great example that it's ongoing.
mhm.
Thank you, Marci. And so, Marci, what is next for you?
Well, I'm actually working on a couple things. I'm working on my next children's book,
Okay.
and it's about a child learning that they have cancer. So I've got it in the editing stages right now. I've
Wow.
also started my own publishing company called Pad to Publishing, and that's to help other people become authors, to be a self-published author. And so
Great.
I've been having fun with it, and I'm excited to see what the future holds, and just go from there. Hopefully, my daughter will write some more books with me. So
Nice. And, I'm so excited about the children's book that you're working on because, we always hear about adults with cancer, but we don't really hear a whole lot other than the St. Jude commercials
Right.
about children who get diagnosed with cancer.
Right.
And really, from what I've learned talking with parents, they feel like they're going through it also,
Yeah.
like they've been diagnosed as well. So thank you for doing that. It is so important and much needed.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got two families that I know that their children have gone through it. And so I've reached out to them to read it, and I've reached out to a nurse. And so I'm looking forward to this one. I think this will definitely be helpful, because I also want to make it like an 8 books actually, where it's going to be a boy version and a girl version, but then the different ethnicities, because I
Nice.
want, white, African American, I'm thinking Asian, and then I'm debating on my last one, but I want the kids to see themselves in the books and go, hey, there's someone like me.
Yes, absolutely. And that's so important as well. Marci, I do want to talk about your publishing company quickly, because a lot of people that have, went through cancer, they end up writing books. Tell us a little bit about your company and how you help people get their books out there and get started.
Yeah, so it's called Pad 2 Publishing, and basically your book needs to be written and hopefully edited. If not, I can help you find an editor. But then I've got a team. So if you want a children's book or coloring books, or do a combination, or do a journal, or whatever you're thinking, I can certainly help you with that. My team can help you with that by formatting it together. And because people don't realize what all goes into publishing a book. And if you want to self-publish, I mean, it is time consuming. There is money that's involved. And so I want to help you with that. And I've got the team to do that by hiring an illustrator, or doing a design cover, or formatting the book for an ebook, or for if you want a paperback versus a hardcover book. So there's so many things that factor into it. And so that's what my company can help you guys with.
Wonderful. Marci, you are doing a lot of wonderful things. And I want to ask you to share with the audience, if someone wants to connect with you, find your books, learn more about the work that you're doing, where can they find you?
Yep. So my website is florpublishing.com. It's FLOR publishing. And my books are also, you have an access to that as well. They're all on Amazon. There's some on Barnes and Noble, some on Walmart. And then I'm on Instagram, which is Marci G. Cox Author. And I'm on Facebook under Marci Greenberg Cox Author. And so just follow me along as I continue on with my journey. And I'd love to share it with the world.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marci. And before we leave today, is there anything else, any other advice or anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
So I've got a motto that I go with, and it's, you're a fighter, not a quitter. And just tell people, you're going to get through it. I know there's so many women, that are also stage 4, but you fight as hard as you can. And, my heart goes out to everybody, whether it's breast cancer or any type of cancer. And, you do what you can, and what you will, you're strong-willed and whatever. And you fight as hard as you can to get through it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marci, for those words of encouragement, and for all that you do. I'm just so impressed that you have a family, you're a realtor, you've been through so much, and you're just still putting out a lot of great and loving resources and books and things like that. So keep doing what you're doing. Congratulations on 3 years also.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And it's been such a pleasure talking with you, Marci. Before we end today, I want to give a shout out to the listeners. Thank you for joining us. That is it for this Wednesday. And until next time, let's keep navigating cancer together. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Navigating Cancer Together. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to subscribe. And if you appreciate the show, drop a positive rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For notes from the show, visit ontheotherside.life and check out the podcast section. After you check out the show notes, head over to my gift shop and show yourself or someone special in your life some love with gifts of encouragement, hope, and positive affirmations. I would love it if you joined us for the next episode. Talk to you soon.